Hi everybody, my name is Hannah and this is Pepper and Pine, and I have a project to share with you today. We are working through our ancient Mesopotamia unit and we're going to be making a clay tablet. I am using some aardvark clay. I'm not worrying about the cone number since we're not going to be firing this, so I'm just getting a few pieces off. I did have to rehydrate this clay. It did dry out. It is a 25-pound block, but once it was rehydrated, it was good to go. So I'm going to be making a thin clay tablet and we're going to be adding some wax to it because it's going to be a wax tablet that we can use over and over again. I did make a few mistakes with this project, and if you would like to try it with the clay, I suggest that you make it thicker. Because I made it too thin, we ended up with a bit of an issue. I am making a little bit of a ledge around the edge. That way when we pour our wax into our clay tablet, it's not going to spill over to the side, but it should have been taller because it ends up spilling over anyway. So do make that edge maybe about 1/4 of an inch high. I am rolling down the inside so it's nice and smooth and just doing my best to shape the edges. This is maybe 6 inches by 8 inches. It doesn't have to be very big. And in fact, the second one we do is even smaller. I am cleaning up the edges as best as I can, and once it's done and it's slightly dry, we're going to put it outside to continue drying. And this is where the mistake occurred. It was too thin, it dried out too much, and it ended up cracking because it curled up on the edges. It didn't dry flat, and then when I pressed it down, it completely cracked everywhere. So I'm going to try to mend it by adding some more clay, which I added some water to so that it was really wet so that it could kind of bind everything together. But in this case, it's best to start over because this did work, but it's not going to be a long-term fix. So this time I decided to bake it and I added some weight on top of it, but you can see that it's still cracked and the back is not in good condition. It ends up holding up really well. But I'm going to go ahead and add my wax on top of my clay tablet. The mistake is that the wax is just beeswax for the most part. So once it cooled, it was too hard for us to actually use it in a way that could be reused unless we melted it again. But it worked really great as a tablet with our dry erase marker. We could erase that pretty well. So we're going to try another way. I'm using my Sculpey Ultralight Oven Bake Clay. I love this clay so much. It's perfect for children because it is soft right out of the bag. And the more you work with it, the softer it gets. But it is my go-to polymer clay that I have been using for many, many years. And once it bakes, it's completely hard unless you bake it for a little less time or it's really thin, which I'm going to show you how we did that. And then you can paint it, and we've used it for so many projects in our homeschool. I'm using my metal ruler just to cut off the extra edges. This does end up being small, but we're going to use those extra pieces in order to make a little lip around all 4 edges. And this is enough for the wax to hopefully stay inside. But again, it does spill over, so try to make your lips just a little bit taller. 1/4 inch seems to be a good amount. I'm going to clean up the edges, and then I'm going to carefully remove it and add it to my parchment paper lined baking tray. And so once this is up, and you can see that it's super thin, and I actually wanted it this thin. So we're going to bake it per manufacturer's details, and once it's done, you can see that it's still kind of bendy. I didn't want it to be super hard, and also this was just a personal preference. I did want it small since we've already done one. I'm mixing some beeswax with some coconut oil. That way, once it cools, it's still soft to the touch so that we can actually write on it. I ended up adding more beeswax and more coconut oil, and now it is just right. You can write on it with a stylus, and then we can use the back side to do our cuneiform writing, and you can see that that presses in just right, and then it doesn't take too much to warm it up so that you can use it again. And you could even just reform it with your fingers. So this was our second attempt at doing our clay tablet. I think that it worked out really well in the end. You could also just use your clay tablets to press in your letters and then it could dry completely, and that could be your cuneiform writing on your clay tablets. I hope that you enjoyed this project. Don't forget to check out the blog post that accompanies this video. You can find that link down in the description box below. I show you more pictures and links to all of the materials that I'm using. And if you'd like to see how we're homeschooling on a daily basis, you can find me on Instagram and now on TikTok at Pepper and Pine.